So today we will be starting with the second session for MongoDB. So हमने पहले session में recapture the things that we have studied in the previous session. Then we will start with the current session. तो हमने previous session में पढ़ा था database क्या होते हैं, उनके कितने types हैं, whether it's a relational database or a non-relational database, what are the advantages and disadvantages of one database over the other. We have seen the example. We have discussed MongoDB कैसे fit होता है NoSQL database में, schema कैसे define करते हैं, what are the models around it. That was the basic gist of what we have studied in the session 12. In session 13, which is also introduction to MongoDB, here we will be discussing the basic operation that is needed by any database. So you would have heard about CRUD operation. So I'll first explain you what is CRUD, what is the expectation, and how can we achieve this in MongoDB with the help of Mongoose. Okay. So first of all, let's discuss the first question. Discuss some of the common Mongoose API for CRUD operation. So if you see, we got two new terminologies here. One is Mongoose, another is CRUD. So I'll start with CRUD. What is CRUD? How it is used? So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So if you want to perform the operation of creating a document in a MongoDB, or you are thinking of reading the document which is already being created in a MongoDB, or updating a record or deleting a record, then you go for CRUD operations. Basically आपको अगर MongoDB में elements को create करना है, उसको read करना है, या फिर update करना है कुछ fields को, या delete करना है, then the CRUD operation comes into picture. So I think CRUD is clear. So CRUD आप लोगों ने REST API में पढ़ा होगा और यहाँ पे भी है. So the basic thing remains the same, only the way it is being interpreted is bit different. Okay. Now I will come to Mongoose. So Mongoose is it's called ODM, Object Data Model library provided by the Node.js, or it is present in Node.js, which helps you to interact with the database. Okay. So अगर मान लीजिए आपको Node.js एप्लीकेशन से MongoDB को पे basic operation CRUD operation perform करना है, then you can take a help of Mongoose. Mongoose not only helps you to connect with the database, but perform the common operation around it as well, whether it's a create operation or a read operation or an update operation or a delete operation. We will discuss each functions of Mongoose in bit detail, but for now, you can assume if someone asks you what is Mongoose, you can simply tell them it is an ODM library, Object Data Modeling Library, that helps you to interact from a Node.js application to a MongoDB server. Okay. So it provides multiple functionality. You can, in the previous session, I think we have discussed how to create a schema with the help of Mongoose. Here we will be performing the basic operation and see how it can be done. So I think I have already explained what CRUD is. So what I will do is, we will try to answer the first question, discuss some common Mongoose API for CRUD operation. So CRUD stands for, as I stated, create, read, update, and delete operation. If we want to perform these operations in MongoDB document, Mongoose provides you multiple functionalities or functions to achieve this. Few of them I have mentioned here. I have given the reference as well, where you can find its usage as well as more detail around it. So if you want to create something, you have two methods. Either you can use the create method, or you can use the save method as well. So model.create is there, model.save is also there. You have, if you want to read something, then you have a find function, model.find, where you can pass, where you can get all the data of a particular collection. Then if you want to update something, you have find by ID and update, which is basically, it will find the data by ID, which is a unique identifier for a MongoDB, and then it will update it based on the object ID and the payload. So if you see here, find by ID and update is a method for updating. What it does is, it takes the first parameter as an object ID. Object ID is just an identifier. It simply takes the primary key by which it can uniquely identify your record, and then it will update the payload. Similarly, if you want to delete something, the function that we have is find by ID and delete. So basically, it will first find the record and then it will delete it out. But usually, as you have been explained in the projects as well, that whenever we want to delete a record, it is not suggested that you should delete from the system itself. We should maintain a flag called is deleted, or delete equal to true, and we should just mark delete equal to true, and in the get call we should just put a flag that, okay, if the record is deleted, I don't want to get that record. So that it's a kind of a soft delete mechanism which has been in place. If you want to use the soft delete functionality, you can use that out. because hard delete, the issue with the hard delete is it can never come back. So take an example, by mistake you have deleted it out. In such cases, in soft delete you can just update the flag to is deleted to be false and it will come back again. Even if you see, Windows also does the same thing. It doesn't delete a file. If you ask for deleting a file, it moves to the recycle bin. And if you want to permanently delete it, then you go to the recycle bin and empty it out. The reason of keeping a recycle bin is, by mistake, if you have deleted something, you can go to the recycle bin and restore it out. Soft delete functionality is also something similar, I would say, that if you want to delete, just update the record to be deleted to be true, and if you want some time to revert the change, in such cases you just have to update the flag. But if you have deleted a record, then again it cannot be coming back again. So that is the first question. What are the Mongoose API we have and how to basically perform the CRUD operation around it. Let's talk about the next APIs, or the next question that we have. Why do you have to use await if you want to process the result? So you would have seen it that most of the time what happens is, if you want to fetch a record or update a record, we use await function. So for this, first of all, we have to understand around async and await. So async and await is a asynchronous way of writing the code in JavaScript. Either you can use promises, you have a callback, and async and await is a newer version, which is wrap around the promises itself. So the reason is explained in the answer itself. Let me read it out and then I'll explain it out. Most of the methods in Mongoose return promises, and to process the result or wait for the result, we need to use await. So what happens is, Mongoose APIs are developed in asynchronous manner. So most of the API returns promises. Now if we are not awaiting for the result, in that case what will happen is the API will return promise. You will proceed further thinking that it is working, but it may happen you may get the error downstream. So just to make sure that the API that you are triggering is actually proceeding and what kind of output are you getting, based on that also sometimes you have to perform some operation, you will use await. Await will simply states that I will wait until the result comes in. So if the result is false, I have to inform the customer that okay, we were not able to fetch the record or we were not able to update the record. On the other hand, if we get a success response, in that case we can send the updated data to the customer or the consumer as well. So because we need to get the output, and we have a business layer which is depending on the output, we use await, because if we don't use await, it will be simply in the promises form that cannot be used. Okay, so now we will come to the next topic. I think this part is clear. Why do we use await with the promise? Because in Mongoose, because they return promises as an output. What are indexes and what is the default index value set by MongoDB? So I think in the previous lecture also I have explained you. I will explain it again. So what are indexes? So indexes in any language, doesn't have to be MongoDB. It is present in MongoDB, Oracle, MySQL, in all databases form it is present. So indexes is simply a way of retrieving the data in a faster way. And how can we do it? Take an example. If you open a book, you see the chapter. Now if you want to study chapter 12, which is on maybe some topic of Mongoose or MongoDB, you don't have to scan each paper or each page to understand where the Mongoose would be present. You can simply see, okay, it is present in chapter 12 at page number 195. You can directly go to page number 195 and start reading from there, right? So basically what index does is it creates a small structure outside the main location where it keeps the references, so that it is easier for you to search it out based on the reference that we have. Even so, Elasticsearch also does the same thing. So we will just read it out what our answer is, and then we will discuss it out how indexes works in MongoDB. So indexes are the spatial data structure, as I said, that stores a small portion of data set in an easy to traverse form. The index stores the value of a specific field and or set of field ordered by value of the field as specified in the index. So think from the perspective, the reason we were able to fetch the record that page number 195 is where the actual chapter of 12 is starting, because it is in increasing order. We know that okay, as we are traversing more pages, if currently I am on the 50th page, if I proceed further, I will find 100, 150. Because the data is sorted based on page number, That is the reason it is easier for us to search it out. As you know, if I come to a searching algorithm, we have linear search and binary search. Linear search scans the whole record to find it out. Binary search, because of sorted nature of the data, it can go to the midpoint and decide whether it wants to go on the left hand side or the right hand side. Similarly, what it does is, whenever you are saying that, let's assume you have user profile where I want to search based on first name, what it will do is it will store the first name in a sorted fashion, so that if you are searching for some, take an example, you are searching for a name called Smriti. Now, because the Smriti word starts with S, it will first try to see that, okay, what is the midpoint of this whole collection. Suppose the midpoint of the collection is H, so I know that H is coming before S, so I will be traversing towards the right hand side to search for it. On the other hand, if the word would have been started with C, in that case I would have gone on the left hand side to search it. Because of sorted nature, it is very easy to search for a particular value. And the idea is, once you have the value of a reference, you can directly go to the document and fetch it out. Okay, so that is how basically any indexes work. So MongoDB indexes also work in the same fashion. We will have a small portion of data set in the easy to traverse form. The index stores the value of a specific field or set of fields ordered by the value of the field specified in the index. So basically we will be ordering so that if you want to search for a data, it is easier to find. Okay. Now the second question which was there is, what is the default index value set by MongoDB? So before going to that, let me explain about index in bit more details. So indexes support the efficient resolution of query. Without indexes, MongoDB must scan every document of a collection to select those documents that match the query statement. This scan is highly inefficient and require MongoDB to process large volume of data. So think from the perspective, suppose you have 10 lakh record and you are searching that give me all the records where the first name starts with or first name is Smriti. Now, in a normal search, what MongoDB will be doing is it will be going through each and every record and checking whether the name is Smriti. So if it is Smriti, it will be just keeping it aside, or else it will keep on scanning. So it has to scan for 10 lakh record just to answer that these are the 2 or 3 records whose first name is Smriti, right? So it is obviously an inefficient way of doing it out. On the other hand, think from the perspective that if I create an index on the first name, then it is very easy, right? I can directly go to the midpoint and try to see, okay, the word starts with H, so I should go on the right hand side. And instead of searching for 10 lakh record, I just have to search for few of maybe 10 or 12 records to come to know that these are the elements whose name starts with Smriti. Now the point is, instead of doing 10 lakhs scan, if I can do it in 10 to 12 scan, obviously it will be way too faster, right? So that is the advantage of using indexes. That brings us to another question. So if indexes are so good, why don't MongoDB itself index everything and every column? So it's not like the indexes has all the advantages, it has few disadvantages as well. That is the reason MongoDB doesn't index all the columns present in a database. So if I have to explain you the disadvantages, think from the perspective we are keeping a separate set of small memory unit where we are keeping the reference. So first of all, the overall storage capacity increases. But nowadays storage is not an issue, or the cost effectiveness of storage is very efficient. So it doesn't matter if you store the out. The second thing is, whenever you are inserting a record into a collection, in that case, earlier what used to happen is you will simply add the record, you are done. But now if you are adding a new record, you have to go and update all the indexes, because until you don't update the index, the get query won't work. Now if I have 20 fields and I have created 20 index out of it, then I have to go at 20 places and update the record so that going forward it can be sourced based on that index. So this is an extra overhead which is coming at the time of insert. So that is the reason it is said that if a document or a collection is a write intensive application, it's not suggested to develop index on it. On the other hand, if it's a read intensive system where the number of read is way too high compared to write, in that case indexing can always help. Okay, now let's come to the next problem statement or the question that we had. The next question that we have was, what is the default way by which MongoDB searches it out? So what is the default index value set by MongoDB? So MongoDB create a unique index on the ID field during the creation of a collection. the id index prevent the client from inserting two documents with the same value of id. You cannot drop this index on the id field. So as stated here, mongodb default index is based on id, because id, by id I mean to say the unique identifier, sometimes it is object id, is what it is default indexes to. Reason being, that is a unique identifier and we want that none of the records should have the same unique identifier. That is the reason MongoDB by default inserts the document in a way it is indexed with the help of underscore ID. So you cannot have duplicate IDs around it. And this is an index which cannot be even dropped. So friends, we were discussing about the indexes, and the second topic which was there is what is the default index value set by MongoDB. So on discussing on that front, the default index which is generated by MongoDB is nothing but a unique identifier underscore ID. So whatever the object ID of the collection is by which the all the documents are uniquely identified, that is a default index which is implemented by MongoDB and it cannot be dropped as well. And the reason of keeping the index default on that particular ID is because we are not authorized to add a duplicate document into a MongoDB with the same ID field. That is uniquely generated and it won't be duplicated out as well. Okay. So to know more around it, you can always refer the references, because references has more details how indexing works in both MongoDB as well as the globally, plus the default index that we have discussed it out. That is also it is explained in the references. So that is the part we want to cover in terms of indexes, how indexes work, MongoDB indexes, and the default index that MongoDB implements. Okay. So let's move to the next question. I think this is the final question of the current session. How to link a document of one collection to a document of another collection using Mongoose. So explain reference in Mongoose. Okay. So basically, if you see, even though NoSQL databases doesn't support extensive relationship, but the basic relationship is also supported in MongoDB or Mongoose as well. Okay, so take an example. If you have a book collection, so it has the name of the book, ISBN number of the book, and the basic details: how many pages, who is the author, year of publishing. But sometimes we need to know about the author who has written the book. In such cases, we have two options. Either we can add the detail of the author as a inherent property into a book document, but the issue with the current design is if you want to add the inherent property into the document, then it can be duplicated across multiple records. Think from the perspective that a particular author can write 10 to 15 books, right? So in the schema, if you are introducing at the 10 to 15 locations and I want to change the name of the author or maybe the age of the author, in that case, I have to go and update at multiple records. And as you know, we have discussed in the previous session, the transaction is not supported by NoSQL databases, or even if it is supported, it is very costly operation in NoSQL. So this design is not scalable. That is the reason we need a linking, so that your the collection should be separate, your book collection should be separate, and you should be able to link a book collection with the author collection. Okay. So this capability is being provided with the help of the references in MongoDB. So I'll just read the answer and then I'll explain you what I have explained it just before. If we want to link a document of one collection into document of another collection, we use a reference data type REF in Mongoose. Okay. It helps us to link two documents together with the help of object ID of one document as a field inside another document. So what we do is take an example in the book table. If I collection, if I want to introduce the author, I can keep the author ID as a reference, which will be pointing to the author collection, and then we can fetch the data around it. Okay. So example for the same is shown below, where person schema is referring to various events that he has attended, which is another collection. Reference of events are mentioned in the person document. So take an example, there is a person collection where the basic details of the persons are there. Plus there are multiple events going on. So it may happen as a person, you can attend multiple events, right? So to keep the reference around it, it is defined here. So take an example, I have person schema where the first name is present, last name is present, email is present, and events attended. Event attended is an array where each type we are just defining schema.types.object ID and the reference is event. So from the event collection, the object ID is being referred and from here we can use it out. The advantage of this is now if you have referred it here, whenever it is changed at the event location, it will be reflected here as well, because you are just referring the mm, reference of it and not the actual data. The second thing is, actually Mongoose provides you a populate functionality as well. With the help of populate, if you are fetching a book detail and you want to fetch few of the fields or all the fields of the author, in the similar fashion you can actually achieve it out. So you can use the populate and you can filter out the fields that you want to fetch from the author table as well, author collections. Okay, that is the concept we have around references and how it helps us to fetch the data in a linked manner. So even though NoSQL databases doesn't support extensive relationship, but a basic relationship with the help of references and all are still present in Mongoose or a MongoDB. Okay, I think with this, I have shared you few references as well to go through it to understand more in detail or in depth around it. So with this, I think we can conclude our session for the MongoDB. What are the capabilities it has, how to use the references, populate and all. We will meet again in the next session. Okay. Thank you for your time. Hello friends. So today we'll be discussing another topic of MongoDB and AWS. So if you remember, we started with the database introduction. We discussed what are the databases, how many kinds of databases are there, whether it's a relational database, non-relational database, what are the features. In the next session, we have seen how MongoDB is a non-relational databases, what are the features does it provide, schema around it. And in the coming session, we will be discussing few of the other API apart from the CRUD API that we have already discussed. At the same time, we'll discuss a bit about the AWS as well. So AWS is a huge topic, but in our discussion, we won't be covering all of them. We will be simply focusing on the AWS, what it is and how S3 is different from AWS, what are the capabilities S3 provides, and the basic details around it. Okay, so let's dive in towards the first problem statement, which is regarding the MongoDB. So the question states that what is the difference between find one and update, and find by ID. So as you see in all four of them or all three of them, basically they are used to find the data, right? As the name suggests, find one, find by ID are mainly used to search a document in a collection in MongoDB. Okay, their internal behavior or the way they are fetching the data changes out. So based on the name, some of them are clear. For the others, I'll explain you out. So find one, find and update is more of a updating functionality once you find the data. So the basic difference between all these three methods are mentioned below. So I'll go towards each of them, explain you out what is the rationale behind it, what is the basic functionality they do, and then we will discuss about how can we achieve the same thing. So the first function is find one. It fetches at max one record. Okay, so as the name suggests, this will only find one record. If a query matches, the first document is returned, otherwise null will be returned. Okay, so as the name suggests, find one, even if multiple records are being found, it will simply gives you either the first record of the matched value, or it will give you the null if none of the records are matching. Okay, the second function that we have is find. So no matter the number of documents matched, a cursor is returned. Even if no document is matching, it won't return null, it will simply return a cursor. So basically what find does is, as the name suggests, it will give you multiple records if all of them are matching. But think from the perspective that if you have 100,000 records and let's assume 50,000 records matched, if it starts giving you all 50,000, your server may crash or we may not be able to handle it out. So what it does is it gives you a cursor. The advantage of the cursor is you can iterate through the cursor to get the data or the amount of data that you need. If you need only 5 of them, just iterate till 5. If you need more, you can keep on iterating. Okay. So the next function that we have is find one and update. As the name suggests, it is similar to find one. The only thing is the first record that you will be getting, it will update the value as well. So I'll just read what definition we have defined here. As the name implies, find one and update finds the first document that matches a given filter, applies an update, and returns the document. By default, find one and update returns the document as it was before the update was applied. So find one and update by default will return you the previous state of the object, not the current one. If you want to fetch the current one, what you have to do is you have to pass a parameter called new equal to true. So if you're passing new equal to true, it will give you the updated value. On the other hand, if you don't pass this parameter, by default, it will give you the older value. So let's discuss about the next one, find by ID. So this function, as the name suggests, it will find a single document by ID field. As we have discussed in the past session as well, the ID is something which is unique to the collection. So there would be only one document with a given ID. So this will always return you either the value would be there with the given ID or it won't be there. So if the value is there, it will return single document. If the value is not there, it won't return you anything. Okay. So these are the four functionalities or the functions that we wanted to discuss in Mongoose. I have given the reference as well to go through it to understand in more details what are the other functionalities it provides and how to use it out. You can go through the references and get more clarity around it. Okay, so I'll move to the next question, which is there is a capability called update one, update and update many. When should we use each of them and how do they differ from each other? Okay, so I'll talk about update one and update many because update is something which is similar. So update one and update many are the functions which are used to update the record in MongoDB. As the name suggests, it is mostly used for updating the record. So I'll come to each of them separately. I have written a code snippet as well to explain it out. So first, let me explain you about update one. So the update one function is used to update the first document that matches the condition. This function is same as update except it doesn't support multi or override option. So basically what update one does is it is similar to update. It will simply update the record, but it won't be updating multiple records. It will be simply updating one set of records. So whenever I say one set of record, the first record which will be found out, it will simply update it. So I have written a sample code as well which can explain it out. So I'll just read it through. So what the given code is doing is it is finding all the document matching the condition with age greater than 5 and updating the first document. So let's assume the function has four parameters, that is filter, update, options, and callback. How it works is first of all user is a schema, and update one what it does is first of all it will try to see that the age is greater than 5. After that name abcd function, it will just console log if it is error or it will update the dog. So name is the value which got updated, but for not all the records but only the record for which the age is greater than 5 and the first record that we found. Similarly, update many is also similar to update, except MongoDB will update all the document that matches the filter. It is used when user wants to update all the document according to the condition. So update one, as I have explained, it will filter all the document, but it will just update the first record. Update many is just opposite of it. It will not only find all the records, but it will update it through as well. So the sample code snippet for the same is mentioned below. So here I have defined the user model. In the user model, if you see, we have Mongo's model we have defined and mentioned two fields only, name and age. So I'm using filter by age and then I'm updating the name. So what we are doing is we are finding all the document matching with the age greater than 5 and update all the function and update all. The function takes four parameter. It takes filter, update, options, and callback. So it will user update. First of all, we are checking that the age is greater than 5. So whatever document that we found, we will simply do name of abcd function, error. In case of error, we will write it down. In case of else, we will mention the updated doc. Okay. So what it does is, as you see, the structure wise both are same, whether it's update or update one or update many. The only difference is in the behavior. If it is update one, it will just update one of the record. On the other hand, if it is update many, as the name suggests, it will update all the records for that particular value or the criteria which is being matched. So I think this is clear what is update one and update many, how do they differ from each other, and how can you utilize it out. I have given the references as well from where I have taken the code snippet. You can just go through it to understand more around it. So this completes our overall journey of a database. So we started from what is a database, relational, non-relational database, MongoDB, CRUD operation. Then we discussed about the schema. Later on, we come across the various options that we have: find one, find and update. What are the options we have? We have discussed around references, populate. So the overall high-level overview of a database can be captured with the three sessions that we have: session 12, session 13, and the half part of session 14. Okay. So now I'll be moving to the second area of the topic that we want to discuss. It is AWS. So first of all, I'll give you the brief idea what AWS is, and then we will be discussing the capabilities which S3 provides, how Amazon Web Service is different from AWS S3, what are the capabilities and how can we use it. These are the things we will discuss. Okay. So first of all, AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. So this is a service which is provided by Amazon. And Amazon Web Service is not a single service, but a group of services or functionalities provided by Amazon to develop a web application. So think from the perspective, if you want to develop a web application, what are the things you need? You may be needing a load balancer so that behind the scene you can deploy multiple services. So Amazon provides elastic load balancer for that. Suppose you want to deploy your code in some server. So they have multiple instances of the server. You can check take EC2. Now, if you want to interact with the database, they provide multiple databases. Elasticsearch is there, Oracle DB is there, MongoDB is there. You can create your instance. Suppose you want to send notification. So for this also they have SNS. Similarly, they have queuing system in place. So anything and everything which is needed to develop a web application from end to end is provided by Amazon Web Service. So Amazon Web Service, you can say, is a group of services or offerings which is provided by Amazon to develop an application from scratch. So any application that you want to create, deploy, build, and manage it through, Amazon Web Service has a capability of handling that out. So that clarifies what AWS is. Now I will come to AWS S3. AWS S3 is one of the offering what Amazon Web Service provides. So all in all, Amazon Web Service provide more than 200 functionalities or the capabilities. AWS S3 is one of the capability that Amazon provides. I will tell you the use case which is being solved by Amazon S3, and then we can discuss in bit more detail around it. So first of all, let me read out the definition formally what AWS S3 means, and later on we can discuss what are it's being used for. So AWS S3 is one of the offering of Amazon Web Service provides. It helps in storing static files like images, videos, and other files. It helps in replicating the data across different geolocations so that it can serve the customer faster by locating the nearest server from the user system. So think from the perspective when you go to Facebook and you are watching the images of your friends or the video that they have posted. Now suppose one of your friend has posted some data in Europe and you are seeing in India or Asia. So it is very hard to get the data from the Europe data center to the current India location, right? Because you have to go through various hop to optimize it out. What we can do is we can create a data center replication at a Mumbai location of the data center, and you can be served from Mumbai. So it is always easier and faster to get the data from a data center which is present in Mumbai than to get the data from a data center which is in Europe. So this replication of data is mostly maintained by CDN. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. Amazon Web Service S3 is a way of storing the data by which you can implement CDN functionality for your services. Sometimes, so if it is a static data, it is suggested to keep it in S3. Reason being, the search capability or fetching the data is way too fast compared to keeping it in the database. Because most of the time, the file which we get is not what so the file that we are getting is not manipulative in nature. By manipulative, I mean to say you don't update a file. On the other hand, think from the perspective, if you have added a post on a Facebook, you update your post. If there is a spelling mistake, you will change it out, you will add some data. So keeping those data in a database makes sense because you are updating the things out. But images mostly are like either you will be using the same image or you will be uploading a new image with all filters and all. So because we don't need the capability of updating the data or a part of a data, so keeping it in the database is not that much viable and suggested. Reason being, then searching would be or fetching the data from different data center in a different region is a costly affair. That is the reason we use S3. So now I think it is clear what AWS is, what AWS S3 does, and how do they differ from each other. So just to summarize the things out, AWS stands for Amazon Web Service. It is basically provides a set of offerings to develop a web application or any cloud application end to end. S3 is one of its offering which helps you to store the static data into a folder format or the bucket format, and it is easier to fetch the data across different geolocation because it can be linked with CDN, which can give you the flexibility of fetching the data from a data center which is nearby your location. Okay. I have given the reference as well, so you can go in detail around it. So before closing on the S3, let me formally explain what S3 stands for and how it stored the data. So formally, we can define S3 as Amazon Simple Storage Service. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. Is an object storage service that offers industry-leading scalability, data availability, security, and performance. So I have explained you the use cases, but what other features does it provide? It provides you scalability. You can keep as much data as you want. You just have to pay for it. Data availability is guaranteed because Amazon takes care of that. Security and performance is something which is inherently being present in the system that you get out of it. Okay, that is one of the advantage I would say for having S3 if you are using S3 for storing the data. Okay, so let's move to the next question, which is regarding what is the command to push in AWS S3. So whenever I'm saying the command to push in S3, it simply means how do we send the data from your server to S3. Okay, just give me a minute. I'll start with this in a minute. Okay, so we were discussing how to send the data in AWS S3. So to send the data or push the data or uploading a data in S3, we can use AWS SDK library. So already a library exists called AWS SDK. We can use this library to upload the data. They provide us the capability to connect with S3, and after connecting, you can decide on which bucket do you want to send the data and send it out. I have written a sample code snippet as well, which can help us out in explaining how can we achieve this out. Just give me a minute. I'll explain you the use case as well. So let me explain you the sample code snippet that actually handles this out. How do we actually upload the data? So if you want to upload any data or by data, I mean to say file. File could be an image, could be a video or anything. So first of all, we need to import AWS from AWS SDK. So this is a library from where we have imported AWS. Now you have to define the S3. S3 is an object which we can create is nothing but an instance of aws.s3. You have to provide the access key ID and the secret access key because these two are the unique identifier which is being taken as an input, and then you get an S3 object. So once the S3 object is being created, so the first thing is you have to define the file name. What is the file that we want to? So once the S3 object is created, in terms of S3 functionality, we are fine. But if you want to upload a file, you should be able to read the file from somewhere, right? So the next code snippet is basically taking care of the functionality of basically defining a file name and reading from the file system. So file system dot read file sync, file name will read the data. Now, once you have the file name and file content is read, what we have to do is in params we are defining which bucket do you want to upload the data, what is the key, and what is the body. So within the key is like a file name you want to give, and the extension you can provide. Apart from that, the other thing is the body. So within the body, you should define the file content. So what data we are trying to upload it out. Once you have this parameters, there is a function called s3.upload. So basically the use case of s3.upload is to upload the data because in s3 object we have already passed the secret key and the access key ID, and what is the data that we want to provide, we have already added in the parameter. Here what we have to do is we have to just pass the params and we have to see the things that error and data. So data is like what is the net data that you got as an output. So first of all, if we are checking if we are getting an error, that means we will reject the things. Else we will be resolving that the data dot location will give you on which location this data has been basically posted through. So basically, if with this you can see that to upload a file in S3, it is some simple set of three steps that you need to follow. Import AWS, create an object of S3, define access key ID, secret key, access key. These are something that you once you registered in S3, it will provide you for your account. Read the file, define the parameter. Parameter will contain the bucket where you want to store the data. Key is the name of the file. Body is the file content that you want to insert. And you can simply use s3.upload. The capability that s3.upload provides is basically it can help you to upload the file. So we have already read the file and we have created the connection. Once everything is done, the remaining steps which remain, the steps which remains is to just upload it out. So s3.upload will help you in uploading the file and then getting the final resolution around it. So once s3.upload uploads it, either you will get a resolution of the function, or it will just pop out the error. I have given few references as well, so that you can just go through it to understand more. We will discuss further topics around AWS and S3. But just to summarize, what are the things we have discussed in S3 and AWS? AWS are a series of capabilities provided by Amazon to develop a web applications in cloud. They have more than 192, 193 functionalities or the offerings they provide. S3 is one of the offering where we stored the static file content, whether it's an image, video, and then we have discussed basically that if I want to upload something out, what are the things we should keep in mind, how the upload should be happening, what are the code snippet that we should be using, from where we should get the access key ID, similarly from secret access key, or after getting it out, how to read a file, define a parameter, and then simple s3.upload should do the job. So that concludes our discussion on AWS. If you guys have any other questions, you can ask me. We can discuss it. Okay, so let's meet in the next session where we can discuss further any topics. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for your time.